What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be comparing the Cold War AK to the Modern Warfare AMAX. Obviously, the AMAX is basically the meta right now and everybody's running it. But I think the Cold War AK is fantastic as well. And in a lot of ways, it's better than the AMAX. And it's currently what I'm running most of the time. I've never really liked the AMAX, though, so I'm not really a great judge of whether or not it's actually better than the AMAX. But for me personally, right now, I like the Cold War AK more than the AMAX. So we'll go through everything. Recoil, TTKs, TTK forgiveness with headshots and extremity shots, damage range, everything. We'll talk about movement, all the stats. Gonna be a really in-depth video comparing the two guns. As always, if you guys like the content, consider dropping that like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. But let's jump into it, and we will compare the Cold War AK to the AMAX. All right, so to start out with, we're going to talk about these two guns in like the main AR slot, where this would be your long-range AR, mid-range AR when you run it with like another SMG or something. So these are going to be the two builds that I would recommend. So for the Cold War AK, you're going to want to use the GRU suppressor for bolt velocity damage range, VDV reinforced barrel for damage range and bullet velocity. It's going to slow you down some, but this is your mid to long range gun, and it's a Cold War gun, so it's way faster than Modern Warfare guns anyway. Axial Arms 3X, now that it's been changed and has much less zoom. And while we're talking about the axial arms, for some reason on this gun, I love this Cyclops reticle. I feel like the Cyclops reticle is by far my favorite that I've found. Just makes it so easy to see your target as you're shooting. Might be because it bounces straight up and it's just a really small dot, so it looks really good, but that's what I run on here. And then Spetsnaz grip, this helps with vertical, horizontal recoil. Again, slows your movement down, but again, it's a Cold War gun, so it's going to be moving faster than Modern Warfare gun anyway. And we'll see that when we look on TrueGameData, that this build's way faster than the AMAX build anyway, even with the slowing down of different things. And then 45 round mag, same size as the AMAX. If you were running like solo quads or something, you could potentially go to the Bakelite 60 round and get an extra 15 bullets, which would obviously give you way more damage per mag than the AMAX, because the AMAX only has a 45 round mag. But the reload time on the AK is fantastic. It's literally like a second. You can reload and then cancel the reload animation within about a second. The full reload, if you don't cancel it, is about the same as the AMAX. It's like 2.2 seconds or something like that. But if you cancel it, the Cold War AK is much faster. And then that's the overall build there. And then for the AMAX, it's just the standard long range AMAX, so monolithic suppressor, longest barrel, VLK, 45 round mag, and commando foregrip. Let's go look at these actual stats for these two builds on TrueGameData. So we're going to start with just stats here, and then we'll move into TTKs, and I've done a lot of TTK analysis on these two guns, so I can show you some interesting stuff there. But they're very similar guns. So the Cold War AK is on the left, AMAX is on the right. AMAX just shoots 30 RPM faster. I think that's 5% faster. The range modifiers are very similar with these two builds. With the reinforced barrel, you get up to 41% range. ADS times are going to be much better on the Cold War AK, because the only two things that are slowing you down on the Cold War AK are the suppressor and the Axial Arms 3X, and that doesn't slow you down very much at all. So the AMAX is up at 407 milliseconds compared to 318 on the Cold War AK. And that's because the VLK, the 45 round mags, the long barrel, and the monolithic all slow you down on the AMAX. So all those things stack up and make the ADS times quite a bit worse on the AMAX, which makes it a little harder to use up close, but this is for a long range build anyway. But it's always nice to have good ADS times, even in long range engagements. Sprint to fire times are going to be the same because they're just standard AK or standard assault rifles. Movement speed's going to be much better on the Cold War AK, up at 4.76 compared to 4.35 with the AMAX. And again, that's because of Cold War guns just being faster in general. And on Cold War guns, the magazine, the barrel, and the underbarrel don't slow your movement speed down. So the commando, 45 round mag, and the long barrel all really slow down your AMAX. So that's really why it's a lot slower. ADS movement speed's about the same. When we do recoil analysis, you'll see that the AMAX has much better recoil. But the Cold War AK is still manageable, I think, personally. But yeah, we'll do advanced recoil analysis in a little bit here. Hipfire is going to be better on the AK, and that's because the AMAX has that long barrel, and Modern Warfare long barrels kill your hipfire. Bullet velocity is about the same with these two builds. You can switch out the VDV reinforced to a Liberator barrel if you want. That'll give you something like 1150 meters per second bullet velocity. So for really long range builds, that might be a better option, but for something you're going to use a little mid range, extending that damage range with the reinforced barrel is really nice. So that's why I used to run the Liberator barrel, and I think I'm going to swap over to the reinforced barrel just so I have an extra, 10-15 meters of damage range in that first drop off. And we'll talk more about that when we get into the TTKs. Reload times, like I said, the reload time is not on the website yet, but if you sprint and cancel the reload animation, it's much faster on the Cold War AK. You can reload it so fast, and they're both gonna have 45 rounds with this build. All right, let's dive into TTKs. So looking at the damage profiles of the two guns, the Cold War AK is 58 to the head, 43 chest, 36 stomach, 36 extremities. The AMAX is 52 head, 42 chest, 35 stomach, 35 extremities. So the Cold War AK does 6 damage more to the head, 1 damage more to the chest, 1 damage more to the stomach, and 1 damage more to the extremities. And then out past that first damage drop off, they're exactly the same. Or no, the AMAX is 46, 36, 31, 31. And the AK is 51, 38, 32, 32. So you're going to do a little more damage with the Cold War AK out past the first damage drop off as well. So we'll see all that in the chart. But starting out with 250 health chest shots, the Cold War AK is orange and the AMAX is purple. So the AMAX slightly kills faster. This is 34 milliseconds faster in the first damage drop off and probably 34 in the second drop off as well, because of how the damage values work out for the bullets to kill. So that's not a very significant difference. It's a pretty tiny difference, really. And if we look at headshots, again, the AMAX is going to have slightly faster TTKs out to that first drop off, but then after that, the Cold War AK's extra 51 damage reduces that TTK by quite a bit compared to the AMAX. So out past that first damage drop off, the Cold War AK is going to be better with headshots. If you look at stomach and extremities are the same on these guns. Not the same compared to each other, but the same within the guns. So 36 for stomach and extremities for the AK, and then 35 for the AMAX. And that actually makes a difference in TTKs. So you can see the TTK is quite a bit better with the Cold War AK on stomach and extremity shots. And we'll go into a little more detail about forgiveness of TTKs as well on Google Sheets here in a second. But overall, they're very similar. The Cold War AK is just a little bit more forgiving because it has better extremities damage and out at range, better headshot damage as well. All right, so I want to dive in and compare TTKs a little bit more advanced than I normally do. So we're going to be doing two things here. Looking for chest shot forgiveness, so how many chest shots you can miss and still get the chest shot TTK in each damage range. This is important because a theoretical chest TTK where you hit every single shot on your chest is probably pretty rare, realistically. And then we're also going to look at TTK improvement from headshots. So how many headshots you have to get and what other combination of shot locations you can also have to get that better TTK than the chest shot TTK. So the first thing we're going to talk about here, first damage range. So this is the first damage drop off. Cold War AK TTK forgiveness. So just 43 to the chest. So we're going to look mainly at chest shots and then see how many chest shots we can miss and still do over 250 damage. So chest shots are 7 shots to kill. So it turns out with the Cold War AK, you can hit anywhere with your last shot. You have to hit 5 chest shots and then you can shoot them anywhere. Extremities is 36. So that comes out to 251 if you hit 5 chest shots and then 1 extremities or stomach shot. Whereas on the AMAX over here on the right, because of how the damage values work out, you can't miss any chest shots. You have to get all 6 shots on the chest to get that chest shot TTK. So that's, both of these are pretty rare, to be honest, but the AMAX is even more difficult to actually get that really good chest shot TTK because you literally cannot miss a single chest shot. Whereas with the Cold War AK, at least you can miss 1 chest shot and still have that fast TTK. And then on the Cold War AK headshot TTK improvement table here, you have to get 3 headshots. So it's 5 shots here. We want to reduce the shots to kill by 1. So it was 6 shots with just chest shots and then it's gonna be 5 shots to improve it. So with 3 headshots, that's 58, 58, 58, and then 1 chest shot with 43 damage. You do 217, and then your last shot can be anywhere. So an extremity shot's 36, and you'll see with 36, it still does over 250 damage. So 3 headshots, 1 chest shot, and 1 anywhere shot, and you get the better TTK with the Cold War AK. And then comparing that to the AMAX, turns out with the AMAX, you have to hit 4 headshots and 1 chest shot. This is much, much more difficult than hitting 3 headshots, 1 chest shot, and 1 anywhere shot. So this is actually more significant, I'd say, than this first one, just because this is a lot easier to do than hitting 4 headshots and 1 chest shot. This is just more of an advanced TTK analysis, and I want to bring this feature to the website. It'd be kind of tricky to program, but could definitely do it. I just don't have time to work on that stuff anymore, unfortunately, so hopefully I'll be able to do this sometime relatively soon. But let's move on to the second damage range. So in the second damage range, both the guns are 7 shots to kill to the chest. So we're going to look at the TTK chest shot forgiveness. So for the Cold War AK in the second damage range, you have to hit 5 chest shots, and then you can hit 2 shots anywhere on the body to get that kill, to get that 7-shot kill. So that's somewhat forgiving. You can miss 2 chest shots and still get the great TTK. Whereas the AMAX, again, doing 36 damage to the chest, you have to hit every single chest shot to get 7 shots to kill for the AMAX. So you're going to be getting the good TTKs a lot more often on the Cold War AK overall, just because it does a tiny bit more damage, which makes it a little more forgiving. And then let's look at that 6-shot mixing in headshots TTK improvements table. So it does 51 to the Cold War AK does 51 to the head. So with 2 headshots and 4 chest shots, you can do over 250 damage and get the 6-shot kill. Whereas with the AMAX, again, much less forgiving out in the second damage range. You need 4 headshots, 1 chest shot, and 1 anywhere shot in order to do more than 250 damage. So obviously there's a bunch of different combinations for how you can do 250 damage, but I'm looking at specific cases for basically how forgiving it is with chest shots and how quickly you can improve that TTK with headshot at 250 health. So there's so many different things that go into TTKs. It's a complicated topic, but this is just like one scenario where I'm just trying to show that the Cold War AK's damage values being just slightly higher actually do make it a little more forgiving in terms of TTKs. So I hope this made sense, but I just wanted to dive into TTKs a little bit more advanced this time. All right, so obviously recoil is king for longer ranges, so we're gonna do some recoil analysis now. I've got those 2 meta builds that I talked about, and I went and did a recoil plot of both of them. So on the left is the AMAX, and then on the right is the Cold War AK. These are both, like I said, the meta builds. So the first thing to note, obviously Cold War AK has significantly more vertical recoil. It is what it is. The other thing to note, the AMAX kind of goes out to the left to start with and then kind of snakes back to the right, whereas the Cold War AK, the first 10 or 15 shots are like perfectly straight vertical. Super easy to hit these shots when you learn it. For me, this little moving left in the AMAX, just because I'm not used to it, I'm not good at controlling that, so I feel like I hit a lot more shots with the Cold War AK currently. But once you hold the trigger down and it starts doing this little S and it just has a lot of vertical recoil, it can be hard to control at really long ranges compared to the AMAX, especially up in this area of the AMAX. The recoil really slows down up here and it's very easy to control. So overall, for really long ranges, I would say the AMAX does have better recoil. But the Cold War AK's recoil being perfectly vertical for the first 10 or 15 shots is awesome, and it makes it really easy to hit those mid-range shots. But the overall magnitude does make it kind of hard for longer range. All right, and something else that's super important is visual recoil. So I did these meta builds again. I went to 30 meters away, recorded both the builds shooting at the same target, and obviously it's playing back slow-mo right now in the background. There's all full speed as well. Visual recoil really is pretty similar between the two. I feel like for the first few shots at least, the Cold War AK is better, but after that, very similar. They both are pretty good in terms of visual recoil. Not too much, not too bad, but I just wanted to compare these side by side so you guys could see what they looked like. Quickly, damage per mag numbers. So the Cold War AK just does a little bit more damage and has a 45 round mag. So the damage per mag numbers are quite a bit higher on the Cold War AK, especially if you switch it over to a 65 round or 60 round mag. So if you wanted to run the slower mags, you can get huge damage per mag numbers with the Cold War AK compared to the AMAX. This is kind of what I was mentioning earlier, but with the 45, they're relatively close, but the Cold War AK still does a little bit more. But with 60, Cold War AK does dramatically more, so it'd be really good for like solo duos, solo quads, anything like that. All right, so I'm going to try to quickly summarize all of this information. Bullet velocities are very similar with these two builds. Damage ranges are very similar with these two builds. Movement speed is going to be quite a bit better with the Cold War AK. The recoil is straight vertical with the Cold War AK compared to the AMAX for those first few bullets, but the AMAX has a much lower vertical recoil magnitude, so for really, really long engagements, the AMAX will probably be easier to control. The Cold War AK does slightly more damage everywhere and has slightly more forgiving TTKs. You can miss more chest shots and hit fewer headshots to have better TTKs. So Cold War AK in that sense is a little bit better than the AMAX. The damage per mag is going to be a little bit better on the Cold War AK than the AMAX, just because it does slightly more damage and they have the same size magazine. And if you want, you can always jump up to the 60 round mag on the Cold War AK, which is going to slow your ADS time down. But your ADS times are still probably going to be quite a bit faster than the AMAX's ADS times, even with the 60 round mag. And your movement's still going to be faster. You're just going to have a gigantic magazine, so you can really take out a lot of people with one clip without having to reload. But the gun has such a fast reload time. Another thing I want to mention that I have mentioned, the Cold War AK's reload times are phenomenal, much better than the AMAX's, especially if you sprint to cancel them. So really, you don't need the 60 round mag, but you can if you want. Cold War AK has the anime waifu skin. That's a pretty big plus. But the AMAX has Enigma, which is pretty cool as well. But overall, they're both phenomenal guns. I just wanted to highlight the Cold War AK. I think it's a little underused right now. I think it's a fantastic gun. It's my favorite right now in the game. Every time I use it, I'm reminded how much I like it. I'm going to be playing in a tournament coming up here on the 13th. Just a small little invitational tournament. And I'm going to be using the Cold War AK and the PPSH, I think, for that. And speaking of that, I'm going to be streaming directly after this, practicing with Sir Tilted Jakey Chu, who is my partner for that duo quads tournament. So it's a 2v2 kill race. If you want to see me practice for that, want to see me use this AK in action, hop on over to twitch.tv/TrueGameData live. I should be live right after this video goes up. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you found it informative and useful. And I will see you all in the next video.